Hey guys, it is me, Miss Goss, and this is our first English lesson online. It's a little bit weird for me to be teaching like this. I would like to be seeing all of you, but I hope you guys all had a really nice Chinese New Year and a good break, and you're all staying safe at home. Um, but yeah, we still have a lot of learning to do. We need to be ready for the end of fifth grade, and we need to be ready for middle school next year. So, my plan is to try and stay on track as much as we can. Of course, there will be some things that we cannot do. Um, but yeah, as you see here, I have your reading choice board pulled up, and I'll put that into my Stanford so that you'll be able to fill this out. And like normal, it will be due on Friday. But rather than giving it to me, you will just post it on Seesaw so I can grade it from there. Okay, so if you guys have any questions at all or you need to talk to me about something, you can send me an email, and I'll also try to check Google Classroom so that we can stay in contact there. But all of your assignments will be posted on my Stanford. All right, so as you remember, well, let's go ahead and do vocabulary first. So rather than having a vocabulary quiz this week, I'll give you some sort of other assignment to prove to me that you know your vocabulary. And so that could be anything from writing a story, writing sentences, or maybe I'll try and get a little bit more creative and have you make a video. We'll see. Um, but I will let you know that probably tomorrow. I'll give you the assignment for what you need to do for your vocabulary words. So on Tuesday, you'll have that. All right, but let's go over the vocabulary for this week. The first word we have is glimpse. Glimpse means to look at something quickly, right? I got a glimpse of myself in the reflection when I was walking. Not a long look, right? But I walked by and I saw my reflection quickly. I got a glimpse of a monkey in a tree on my hike. I saw the monkey for a second and then it ran away. Scurried means to run or move quickly. Mice scurried away from the cat. They ran away quickly from the cat. The people scurried away from Godzilla. They ran or moved quickly away from Godzilla. You can see away usually follows scurried. The next word is boulder. It is a very large rock. The earthquake caused boulders to roll down hills and block roads. When I got tired on my hike, I sat down on a boulder, a big rock. I actually did do this when I went hiking over Chinese New Year. I sat on a boulder. Dynamite is a highly explosive material. So, dynamite is used on cartoons by Wile E. Coyote. If you know Looney Tunes, Wile E. Coyote, he always uses dynamite to try and stop the Roadrunner. And the builders used dynamite to destroy the old building so that they could build a new one. They used dynamite to explode the building down to nothing. They could clean it up and then build a new building. Commotion is a loud noise or disturbance. There was a lot of commotion on the street after the accident. There was a sudden commotion when the superstar exited the vehicle. Loud noises, disturbances, because the superstar gets out of the car. Pulverized means broke into small pieces. The lawnmower pulverized the grass. It broke it down into teeny tiny pieces. And after the explosion, bits of pulverized rock floated through the air. Tiny pieces of rock that were broken into small pieces because of the explosion. So those are your vocabulary words. Excuse me. Um, Again, I will give you an assignment on Tuesday on what you need to do with those vocabulary words. All right, so moving on, if you guys remember, we've been talking about folk tales. And so we've learned about fables, and if you remember, fables are, what are fables? Do you remember? If you think back, fables are short stories and they have a few characters, usually not more than 3, and they teach a moral or like a life lesson. And then we also read about fairy tales. Fairy tales start with what? Once upon a time. And they often end with, and they lived happily ever after. And fairy tales have a lot of magic. And then the week before, we were at, before Chinese New Year, we learned about myths. We looked at Native American myths. We looked at the Chinese New Year myths. And myths will explain how or why usually something in nature happens. Not always, but a lot of the times that is what they look at. So now we're moving on to something called tall tales. Tall tales are also folk tales, but they actually are often set in the United States. So if we do a quick history lesson, and I pull up a map here, oh no, a map of the United States. All right, so if you remember, we've talked about this a little bit before, but when people first settled in what is now the United States, they moved from, they landed on the East Coast, right? Because they were taking ships over from England, from other parts of Europe, and they were settling here. And then people started slowly moving from the coast inward. And so then we have this period of time called westward expansion. And so people were moving from this part of the United States out west. And there was something called the Oregon Trail that ended in Oregon. But it was bringing people new land because here people had already settled and had land. And so this whole area was like the wild, wild west. There weren't roads. There weren't even really ways to get there. A lot of people got in a covered wagon, which covered wagons look like this. Got in old covered wagons and they moved to the west, just everything that they had. So it was westward expansion. And so that's what the setting of a lot of these tall tales is. The Wild West, people moving out west, that period of time in the 1800s where the United States was expanding. So what is a tall tale? So we already know that books are divided into 2 groups. We have fiction and nonfiction. And fiction, of course, is fake. And nonfiction is not fake. So we're going to talk about tall tales. So a tall tale is a fictional story that really stretches the truth. It has heroes or sheroes, of course those girl heroes, of tall tales that are larger than life, right? There's a lot of exaggeration. So sometimes the heroes or sheroes in a tall tale are completely made up. They never existed, but sometimes they're based on an actual person who really lived. Nonetheless, it's not historical fiction because there are so many exaggerated events and things that just couldn't be true. Through the telling of the story, these characters are given exaggerated characteristics. They are bigger or stronger than real people and than real people can ever be, and they solve problems in a way that is really hard to believe. So tall tales were first told in America by the settlers who made their homes in the American wilderness. In those days, people didn't have TV, movies, or even many books, so they depended on storytelling for their entertainment. This is very much the same as all the folk tales that we've learned up until now. So, after a long day's work, people would gather together and tell one another unbelievable stories. The tall tale heroes and sheroes were like regular people. They did the same type of work as the settlers, except they did it with amazing speed, strength, or cleverness. Maybe having these heroes and sheroes helped give the settlers the courage to do their difficult and dangerous work. So yeah, moving across the United States was often dangerous. People got sick and died. There were wild animals. And so having these stories was really encouraging to them when they would hear these really strong or amazing characters from the tall tales. It was very encouraging. Some classic tall tale heroes and sheroes are Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed, Davy Crockett, Sally Ann Thunder, Anne Whirlwind Crockett, John Henry, Pecos Bill, and Slewfoot Sue. So 4 things that you'll really find in all tall tales that they all have in common. Number 1, the main character has a regular job but is larger than life or superhuman in his or her abilities. We're going to read about John Henry later today, and you can see that his strength was like crazy. He was crazy strong. That so much, it's so exaggerated that it couldn't be true. The character has a problem or problems that he or she solves in a funny way. Usually it's pretty funny what they do. Number 3, details in the story are exaggerated beyond belief. There's no way that the stories could happen like they're told to be happening. And number 4, the characters use everyday language and are like common people in their behavior. So we're going to see that a lot of times when there's dialogue being used, they're kind of using American West slang, where they talk like this old boy, or they have a country accent. All right, so that is the end of the beginning of our lesson. There's going to be a second part that you guys should watch where we're going to read John Henry.